The planet Zorith was alive with strange colors and sounds. Its sky was painted in shades of violet and gold, and the forests were dense with towering trees that glowed faintly at night. The emperor's palace rose from the center of the largest city, built of crystal-like material that reflected the sunlight in thousands of sparkling beams. The emperor, a tall and powerful alien with golden eyes, ruled with wisdom and strength. His people, a proud and intelligent race, lived in harmony with nature and advanced technology. Among the emperor's treasures were his young predator cubs. These cubs were not ordinary animals, they were born with sharp minds, strong limbs, and keen senses. Their fur shimmered in colors that changed with their emotions, and they were playful but fearless. The emperor loved them dearly and always kept a close watch. One bright morning, the cubs were playing in the palace gardens. They leaped over fountains, chased glowing insects, and tumbled among flowers that sang soft tunes when touched. The emperor watched from a high balcony, smiling as he observed their energy and curiosity. "Be careful," he called softly, though he knew they rarely listened to warnings. The cubs only responded with joyful growls and playful leaps. As the day passed, the cubs grew adventurous. They wandered past the palace gates and into the edge of the great forest. The guards noticed their absence immediately and rushed to follow, but the cubs moved too quickly, disappearing among the trees. By afternoon, panic began to spread. The emperor's advisors reported that the cubs had been missing for hours. The emperor's golden eyes narrowed, and a wave of concern swept through him. He had never allowed the cubs to roam so far alone. The emperor called a council of his elite guards. "Search every corner of the forest," he commanded. "They are young, but clever. They may have hidden themselves, but they are not safe out there alone. Find them quickly." The guards nodded and dispersed, using advanced scanners and tracking devices. They moved swiftly through the dense forest, following faint tracks that glowed slightly with the energy left by the cubs. The trees whispered as they passed, and the forest seemed alive, observing the search with quiet curiosity. Meanwhile, not far from the palace, a human female named Mara was conducting research. She was part of an interstellar team studying rare plants and their energy patterns. Mara had long brown hair tied back and carried a small pack filled with tools, food, and recording devices. She moved carefully through the undergrowth, noting the unusual flora and collecting samples. As she stepped into a clearing, Mara noticed something strange. Small glowing paw prints were scattered across the soft ground. They did not belong to any animal she had seen before. Curious, she followed the trail cautiously. The forest grew quieter, and the wind carried soft, distant growls. Mara's heart beat faster, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She had faced dangerous creatures on other planets, though nothing quite like this. The cubs, unaware of the search, were exploring a sparkling stream. They played with the water, splashing each other and chasing shimmering fish. One cub slipped on a smooth rock, landing in the water with a small splash. Its siblings laughed and helped it climb out. They were happy and fearless, not knowing how worried their father had become. Mara approached the stream slowly. She crouched behind a large fern and observed the cubs. They were larger than she expected, with sleek fur and bright eyes that reflected curiosity and intelligence. One cub noticed her immediately, tilting its head and sniffing the air. Mara stayed very still, showing no sign of threat. The cubs hesitated, then returned to their playful antics. Back at the palace, the emperor's worry grew. Hours passed, and the forest yielded no signs of the cubs. He sensed their energy faintly, like small sparks in a vast darkness. His people were skilled hunters, but even their best trackers struggled to find the young predators. The emperor began to consider the possibility that the cubs were not simply lost, they were somewhere unusual, perhaps drawn by something beyond the forest. As the sun began to set, Mara decided to rest near the stream. She placed her pack carefully and sat quietly, still observing the cubs. The cubs, curious and unafraid, crept closer. One nuzzled her hand, sniffing gently. Mara smiled softly and offered a small piece of dried fruit from her pack. The cub took it cautiously, then shared it with its siblings. They seemed to sense her kindness. Night fell over the forest, and the sky turned a deep violet. The cubs curled up around Mara, their glowing fur providing soft light. She stayed still, letting them rest, feeling a strange warmth and trust grow between them. For the first time, she sensed a deeper connection, as if the cubs understood that she was not a threat. Far above, the Emperor watched the forest from a distant tower using his energy sight. He felt relief mixed with confusion. The cubs were safe, he sensed, but he could not see where. Something unusual was at play. He decided that he must find them personally in the morning. That night, the forest was quiet except for the gentle breathing of the cubs and the soft hum of Mara's equipment. She did not sleep fully but stayed alert, knowing the creatures relied on her protection. The bond forming between human and alien cubs was silent yet strong. Mara understood they trusted her completely, and she vowed to keep them safe until they could return to their father. The Emperor, though far away, felt the energy of his children close yet hidden. His mind raced with questions about the human who had earned their trust. He had never seen a species act with such careful patience and respect toward his young predators. This would change the way he saw humans, though he did not yet fully understand why. Morning would bring new challenges, but for now, the cubs were safe, and Mara was their guardian. The story of trust, courage, and the first meeting between human and alien predator had begun. Morning broke over the forests of Zoroth, bathing the trees in soft golden light. The wind carried the smell of flowers and fresh rain, and the streams glimmered under the rising sun. Mara woke slowly, careful not to disturb the sleeping cubs. They had shifted during the night, curling around her like tiny living cushions of warmth and fur. Their glowing eyes blinked open as she gently stretched, and they nuzzled her hands in greeting. Mara smiled and whispered softly, "Good morning, little ones. We need to stay careful today." She knew the Emperor's people would be searching tirelessly for the cubs, and she could not let them feel threatened. The cubs chirped and yawned, stretching their limbs. They were playful, energetic, and surprisingly intelligent. Mara had already realized that understanding their behavior required patience and observation. Meanwhile, far from the stream, the Emperor had mobilized his best trackers. They moved in perfect formation, scanning every tree, bush, and rock. They could sense the cubs' energy faintly, but the forest was vast and filled with natural interference. Birds with luminous feathers flew overhead, and small creatures darted between the roots, creating false signals. One of the trackers, a tall alien with blue-tinted skin named Rallan, frowned. "Their traces are faint here," he said. "They may have moved beyond the northern cliffs." The Emperor, observing the operation through a crystal communication device, frowned as well. He sensed that something unusual was interfering with the cub's natural energy signature. "Expand the search," he commanded. "Do not disturb the balance of the forest. They are clever, but we must find them before nightfall." Back at the stream, Mara had prepared a small breakfast for herself. She carefully placed a few pieces of fruit and water nearby and watched as the cubs played in the shallow water. They leaped and splashed, testing the limits of their agility. One cub chased a small fish and tumbled into the water with a surprised squeal, then quickly climbed back to the shore, shaking its glowing fur. Mara laughed quietly, enjoying the innocence of the creatures. Suddenly, one of the cubs lifted its head and twitched its ears. Mara followed its gaze and noticed a faint shimmer in the distance. A group of alien scouts had entered the clearing. They moved carefully, scanning for energy signs without disturbing the forest's natural rhythm. Mara's heart pounded. She knew she had to act carefully. The cubs could sense the approach of their species, and they would react defensively if frightened. Mara stood slowly, holding out her hands in a gesture of peace. The cubs followed her silently, stepping closer to her side. The alien scouts paused, noticing the human presence. One of them, a female named Tira, tilted her head in curiosity. She had never seen a human interact so calmly with the cubs. Mara whispered softly, "Stay calm. Don't be afraid. They won't hurt you." The cubs chirped and stepped forward, showing no fear. Tira's eyes widened. "They are trusting her," she murmured to her companion. "This is unusual behavior. Humans do not often earn such trust from our young." As the morning passed, Mara guided the cubs toward a safer part of the clearing, away from the scouts. She realized that while the cubs were playful, they could also be easily startled by sudden movements or loud noises. Her calm voice and steady movements helped keep them relaxed. The cubs seemed to understand that she was helping them, not threatening them. The emperor, observing from afar, felt a strange mix of pride and caution. He trusted his scouts and trackers, but he had never considered that a human could provide protection for his children. This revelation made him curious. He wondered what qualities Mara possessed that allowed her to gain the cubs' trust so quickly. It was a patience and kindness that even some of his own kind struggled to show. By midday, Mara led the cubs to a small grove filled with soft moss and gentle sunlight. She spread out a blanket she had carried and offered them food again. The cubs ate happily, their tails flicking with contentment. Mara watched carefully, noting their behaviors, learning their patterns. She realized that understanding the cubs' needs required empathy and observation, not just careful planning. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the edge of the grove. Mara froze, but the cubs did not seem alarmed. They sniffed the air and looked toward the sound. A group of forest animals emerged, curious about the humans and cubs. The cubs immediately recognized that these animals were harmless, and they continued playing. Mara relaxed and smiled. The cubs were learning, adapting, and showing intelligence far beyond normal predators. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Mara considered the path forward. The cubs needed safety and protection until they could be returned to the emperor. She decided to move them deeper into the forest, where the trees were thicker, and the scouts would have a harder time locating them. The cubs followed willingly, trusting her completely. Meanwhile, the emperor's scouts reported back. "We have sensed energy patterns moving northward," Tira said. "But we cannot get a clear reading. Something unusual is influencing the cubs' energy." The emperor's eyes glowed with thought. "Then we will proceed carefully. We must find them before nightfall, but we must also understand what is protecting them." Night was approaching, and the forest grew quiet except for the sounds of flowing water and distant bird calls. Mara found a small hollow among the roots of giant trees and decided it would serve as a safe resting place for the cubs. She arranged soft moss and leaves, creating a comfortable nest. The cubs curled up together, some resting their heads on Mara's lap. Their glowing fur illuminated the hollow in soft, gentle light. Mara whispered, "You are safe here. Sleep well." The cubs' eyes closed, and they breathed deeply, completely relaxed. Mara stayed awake, alert to any signs of danger. She knew the emperor's people were nearby, but she also sensed that her careful approach had prevented any conflict. Far above, the emperor felt the presence of his children, safe but hidden. He did not yet know the human who had protected them, but he sensed her courage and calm. This human was different from others he had encountered. She had qualities that could be valuable to his people. The night passed quietly, with the cubs sleeping peacefully beside Mara. The bond between human and alien young predators grew stronger, and Mara understood that trust and patience were powerful forces. The search would continue in the morning, but for now, safety and understanding had created an unspoken connection that would guide the events to come. The morning sun filtered through the towering trees of Zoroth, casting long golden beams across the forest floor. Mara woke to the gentle sounds of the cubs stretching and moving around her. Their glowing fur had dimmed slightly during the night, but the warmth of their bodies reminded her that they were safe and healthy. She smiled softly as one cub nudged her hand, seeking attention. Mara had spent the night observing them closely, learning their behaviors and patterns. The cubs were playful, yes, but they were also intelligent and aware of their surroundings. They had sharp senses, noticing even the smallest movements in the forest. Mara realized that earning their trust had required more than patience, it required respect for their instincts and emotions. As she prepared a small breakfast, Mara noticed the cubs responding to her voice. One followed her closely as she gathered water from the nearby stream. Another climbed onto a low branch, balancing effortlessly, and then leaped down near her without hesitation. Mara laughed softly, amazed at their courage and agility. The emperor, far away in his palace, felt the energy of his cubs again. This time, he sensed something unusual. The cubs were calm and content, which meant they were safe, but he also felt a strong, unfamiliar energy nearby, human energy. His curiosity grew. He had heard stories of humans, but he had never encountered one who could influence the cubs' behavior without force. He decided that he must understand this human, but for now, finding his children was the priority. Mara knew she could not keep the cubs hidden forever. The Emperor's scouts would continue their search, and the forest was large but not endless. She decided to explore further into the valley, hoping to find a safer area where the cubs could remain undisturbed. The cubs followed her willingly, their trust evident in their calm movements. As they moved through the dense forest, the cubs occasionally paused to investigate strange plants or insects. Mara let them explore, careful not to intervene unless necessary. She had learned that allowing the cubs to act naturally built trust and understanding between them. She observed how they communicated silently with each other through subtle gestures, tail movements, and soft sounds. It was fascinating to see their intelligence in action. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the valley. The cubs froze, their ears twitching as they scanned the area. Mara remained calm, speaking softly to them. "It's okay. Stay close to me." Slowly, the cubs relaxed, recognizing that Mara posed no threat. From behind a thick line of trees, a small herd of native creatures emerged, grazing peacefully. The cubs observed them with curiosity, then returned to Mara, clearly understanding that these creatures were harmless. Mara continued deeper into the forest, finding a small clearing surrounded by protective cliffs and thick vegetation. It was a perfect place for the cubs to rest and play safely. She spread out a blanket and placed water and food nearby. The cubs immediately approached, sniffing the area and exploring the small clearing. One of them climbed onto her lap, curling up as if seeking comfort. Mara stroked its fur gently, feeling a connection growing stronger with each passing moment. Meanwhile, the Emperor's scouts had traced the cubs' energy to the northern cliffs. They approached cautiously, using techniques that would not disturb the forest or alert the cubs prematurely. Tira, one of the scouts, reported to the Emperor, "The cubs' energy signature is stronger here. They are not hiding in fear, but in trust. Something unusual is influencing them." The Emperor's eyes glowed as he processed the report. He realized that the human must be nearby, protecting the cubs without harming them. This was highly unusual. His species rarely allowed outsiders, especially humans, to interact with their young in such a way. He decided that understanding this human was as important as retrieving his children. Back in the clearing, Mara watched as the cubs played. One chased its tail, spinning in circles and making soft chirping noises. Another attempted to climb a small rock formation, then tumbled down and rolled safely into the moss. Mara laughed and encouraged them gently. "Good job. You're learning fast." The cubs responded with happy sounds, nuzzling her and brushing against her legs. Mara realized that they were not only intelligent but also capable of forming emotional bonds. Their trust in her was complete, and she felt a sense of responsibility to protect them no matter what. As the day progressed, Mara noticed subtle behaviors that indicated the cubs' feelings. When she moved closer, they leaned into her presence. When she spoke softly, they paused and listened. When they played together, they glanced at her frequently, as if seeking approval or reassurance. Mara understood that she had earned their respect and trust, which was more valuable than any weapon or technology. The emperor, observing from his distant palace, felt a mixture of pride and curiosity. His children were safe, but he was intrigued by the humans' ability to connect with them. He had always believed that humans were unpredictable and often weak, but this human displayed qualities that even some of his species lacked: empathy, patience, and courage. He made a decision. When he found the cubs, he would not act with immediate force. Instead, he would observe and learn, understanding the human's intentions before making any judgment. As evening approached, Mara prepared a small area for the cubs to rest. She gathered soft leaves and moss, arranging them carefully. The cubs settled down, curling up beside her. Mara sat quietly, watching the forest and listening to the sounds of life around her. She felt a deep connection not only to the cubs but also to the forest itself. The night was calm, and the cubs slept peacefully, their glowing fur casting soft light around the clearing. Mara stayed awake, alert but relaxed, feeling a sense of fulfillment. She had never imagined that her journey to study the plants of Zorith would lead to such a profound experience. She had earned the trust of creatures thought to be untamable, and she had discovered a new understanding of life, intelligence, and empathy. The emperor, sensing the calm energy of his children, realized that he had much to learn from this human. He had believed that his species' strength and discipline were unmatched, but the human's patience and respect had created a bond stronger than fear or dominance. The cubs were safe, but the lessons of trust and cooperation were only beginning. The first night of the journey had passed. Mara, the cubs, and the forest existed in quiet harmony. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, the bond between human and alien predators had grown deeper. Trust, courage, and understanding had begun to shape an unlikely alliance that would change the lives of all involved. The morning light broke gently across the forests of Zorith. Birds with shining feathers flew between the tall, glowing trees, and the streams reflected the pink and gold sky. Mara stirred quietly as the cubs stretched and yawned beside her. Their fur glowed softly, a sign of their health and calm. Mara had learned to move carefully around them, never rushing or startling them. She prepared a small breakfast, laying out water and food near the cubs. One of the younger ones climbed onto her lap, purring softly. Mara smiled and stroked its fur. She had begun to understand the cubs' behaviors. They were playful, curious, and clever, but they also had a strong sense of loyalty and caution. They trusted her completely, and she knew she must keep earning that trust. Far above the forest, the emperor was preparing to join the search personally. He had received reports from his scouts that his children were safe but influenced by an unusual energy. He had sensed the human who was protecting them. Curiosity and concern mingled within him. His golden eyes glowed as he considered what this human might be capable of. He had never allowed an outsider to influence his young predators, yet this human had done so without force or threat. The emperor descended from his palace in a sleek transport vessel, moving silently toward the northern forests. Elite guards accompanied him, scanning the terrain with precise sensors. They moved with care, mindful of the forest and the creatures within it. The emperor's mind focused on his children, but he also thought of the human. She had acted with patience, intelligence, and courage, qualities that were rare even among his own people. Mara, unaware of the emperor's arrival, had led the cubs to a hidden part of the valley. Here, the trees were denser, and the light filtered softly through thick branches. The cubs played among moss-covered rocks, chasing each other and testing their strength. Mara watched them with fascination, noting their coordination and intelligence. Suddenly, a faint shimmer appeared through the trees. Mara paused, her instincts alert. The cubs also noticed, their ears twitching as they sensed something approaching. Mara held out her hands, speaking softly. "It's okay. Stay calm." The cubs relaxed slightly, trusting her guidance. The shimmer grew closer, revealing the Emperor and his guards. The Emperor stepped forward, his presence commanding but calm. The cubs froze, then slowly approached him. Mara stayed beside them, her posture relaxed but alert. She did not want to frighten the Emperor, and she did not want the cubs to feel threatened. The Emperor observed carefully. He could feel the cubs' energy and notice their calm behavior. His eyes shifted to Mara. She was human, yet her energy was steady and strong. The cubs had chosen to remain near her. This was highly unusual. The Emperor had expected fear or distrust, but there was neither. Tira, one of the Emperor's elite guards, whispered, "They are calm, my lord." "And the human, she has influenced them without force." The Emperor nodded slightly, keeping his focus on the cubs. "This is not ordinary," he said. "We must understand her before taking further action. She may be dangerous, but so far she has shown only patience and care." Mara spoke quietly, her voice calm and steady. "I have not harmed them. I only protected them when they were alone and vulnerable. I want them to be safe, and I want to help return them to you." The Emperor tilted his head, observing her carefully. There was honesty in her voice and purpose in her actions. She did not seek power or reward, she only acted with care and understanding. The Emperor's respect for her began to grow. The cubs, sensing the Emperor's presence, moved closer to him. One jumped onto his foot, purring softly, while another brushed against Mara's leg. The Emperor reached down, gently stroking the fur of the cub that had approached him. The cubs responded with warmth, showing affection for both Mara and their father. Mara watched silently, understanding the delicate balance of trust. The cubs had accepted the Emperor, but they had also chosen to remain near her. She realized that this bond was unique, a connection that could guide the relationship between human and alien. The Emperor stepped back slightly, addressing Mara. "You have shown courage and patience. You have earned the trust of my children. This is not something I take lightly." Mara nodded. "I only wanted them to be safe. I did not expect anything in return." The Emperor's golden eyes reflected thought. "Humans are often unpredictable, but you have demonstrated qualities that are rare: empathy, courage, and wisdom. These qualities have kept my cubs safe. You have my respect." Mara felt a sense of relief, but she remained cautious. She knew the cubs' safety depended on her continued care and understanding. She spoke softly to them, encouraging them to remain calm. The cubs responded, curling around her and the Emperor, showing that trust could exist between species. The Emperor signaled to his guards. "We will return to the palace slowly. The cubs will remain calm because they sense trust. We must not disturb this balance." Mara nodded, understanding the importance of cooperation. She gathered the cubs carefully, making sure each was comfortable. The Emperor watched, impressed by her skill and calm demeanor. The journey back to the palace would be long, but the cubs' trust had created a bond that made the task possible without conflict. As they began moving through the forest, the cubs played gently along the path, showing curiosity but no fear. Mara stayed close, guiding them with soft words and gestures. The Emperor walked alongside, observing the unique connection between human and cubs. He realized that trust and patience could be as powerful as any weapon or technology. The forest seemed to recognize the unusual alliance. Birds and small animals observed quietly, sensing no threat. Even the streams and trees seemed to bend toward harmony, creating a path for the journey. Mara felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her careful actions had not only protected the cubs but had also created understanding between species. By late afternoon, the group reached a high vantage point overlooking the palace city. The Emperor paused, allowing the cubs and Mara to see the familiar structures. The cubs chirped happily, excited to return to their home. Mara smiled, proud of their courage and resilience. The emperor turned to Mara once more. You have changed the way I see humans. Your actions show that strength is not always physical. Trust, patience, and empathy can be even stronger. Mara nodded humbly. I only wanted to help. That is all. The emperor's expression softened. And that is enough. For now, we will return home. Tomorrow, we will see what lessons can be learned from this alliance. As the sun began to set, casting the city in warm light, the cubs moved happily toward the palace with the emperor and Mara. The bond between human and alien young predators had grown stronger, creating trust, respect, and understanding. The story of cooperation and courage was only beginning, but already it promised a future where species could work together, learning from one another. The palace of the emperor stood tall above the city, its crystal towers catching the last rays of the sun and reflecting them in thousands of sparkling lights. The cubs, walking carefully beside Mara, chirped and sniffed the air as they approached their home. The emperor led the way, his eyes bright with pride and curiosity. The cub's energy radiated around him, and he felt relief mingled with wonder at the calm confidence Mara had inspired in them. As they entered the palace gardens, the cubs recognized familiar paths and scents. Their small paws touched the soft glowing grass, and they sniffed the sparkling fountains eagerly. They were home, yet they did not stray from Mara's side. She walked with them carefully, allowing the cubs to explore while keeping their trust intact. The palace guards observed quietly. Many had never seen the emperor's children return in such a calm state after being missing. The scouts who had tracked them nodded to each other, impressed by the human who had protected and guided the cubs. Whispers spread through the garden, this human was remarkable, and the emperor's interest had grown. The cubs paused near a fountain, their reflections shimmering in the water. One cub dipped a paw into the liquid, splashing gently, while another climbed a low branch to survey the garden. Mara watched them with admiration, noting their intelligence and curiosity. She realized that the cubs' trust in her had made their return smoother than any technology or force could have accomplished. The emperor observed silently, sensing the bond between Mara and his children. He had expected caution or fear from the cubs, yet they had been playful and calm throughout the journey. The human had done what his people could not, she had guided his children with patience, understanding, and care. Tira, one of the elite scouts, approached the emperor quietly. They are safe and calm, my lord. The human has influenced them without using fear or dominance. It is remarkable. The emperor nodded. I see it. She has qualities that our people rarely possess. Courage, patience, empathy. These have kept my cubs safe. We must recognize this, but first, they must be reunited with their family. Mara led the cubs further into the palace, through corridors filled with soft light and gentle humming from the crystal walls. The cubs' senses picked up the familiar energy of their family. They chirped excitedly, their tails flicking, yet they stayed close to Mara, showing that their bond with her was strong. Finally, they reached the main chamber, where the emperor's advisors and family awaited. The cubs rushed forward, nuzzling their parents and siblings with joyful energy. Their playfulness and excitement filled the room, creating laughter and happiness among the observers. Mara stood quietly, smiling as she watched the reunion. The cubs' family recognized her presence and immediately understood her role. They did not feel threat or challenge. They only felt gratitude. The emperor approached Mara, his golden eyes calm and thoughtful. You have done well, he said. You have protected my children, guided them safely, and earned their trust. For this, I thank you. Mara bowed respectfully. It was not difficult. They trusted me, and I wanted to keep them safe. That was all I hoped to do. The emperor considered her words carefully. Many of our kind focus on strength and discipline. They do not always understand that patience and empathy can be more powerful than force. You have reminded me of this truth. One of the cubs, a small female with silver-tipped fur, climbed onto Mara's shoulder, chirping softly. Mara laughed gently, stroking the cub's fur. "You are all brave and clever," she said. "I am glad you are safe." The emperor watched this interaction with interest. His cubs had accepted Mara completely, showing affection for her while maintaining love and respect for him. This balance of trust was extraordinary, and he realized that humans might have untapped potential for cooperation and understanding. Tira stepped forward. "The scouts and I observed the journey." The cubs responded to the humans' calm presence at every turn. They did not act out of fear or caution, only curiosity and trust. "She has done something remarkable." The emperor nodded. "Yes. Her actions have prevented conflict, and her patience has allowed a bond to form between species. This is a lesson we must learn from. Trust and understanding can be stronger than any weapon." Mara felt a sense of pride but remained humble. She had not expected recognition or praise. Her goal had been to protect the cubs, and now she realized that her careful approach had created a new connection between humans and the emperor's people. The cubs, sensing the calm and approval of their family, chirped happily and explored their surroundings. They were playful and energetic, yet they also demonstrated a sense of security that Mara had helped create. She realized that her bond with them had lasting effects. The cubs had learned to trust her, and this trust now extended to their family as well. The emperor spoke softly, addressing both his family and the humans present. "We have learned today that patience, courage, and empathy are strengths. The human before us has shown these qualities, and we must respect and acknowledge them. She has not only protected my children but also taught us a lesson about cooperation and understanding." Mara bowed again, feeling the weight of the emperor's words. She had only acted out of care, yet her actions had created respect and trust among a species that many considered distant and powerful. The moment was humbling and inspiring. The cubs gathered around Mara once more, chirping and nuzzling her hands. She laughed gently, feeling the warmth of their energy and affection. The emperor observed quietly, understanding that this bond between human and alien young predators was unique and valuable. Evening approached, and the palace gardens glowed under soft lights. The cubs were safe, happy, and reunited with their family. Mara had earned their trust and the respect of the emperor. The journey had taught lessons of patience, courage, and understanding that would shape the future interactions between humans and the emperor's people. The emperor turned to Mara once more. "You have shown us the strength of trust and empathy. You have earned our respect and gratitude. This alliance, though small now, may shape the future for both our species." Mara nodded humbly. "I only wished to help. I am glad the cubs are safe and happy." The cubs chirped in agreement, climbing onto Mara's arms and shoulders. The emperor smiled subtly, recognizing that the bond formed in these past days was extraordinary. The story of trust, courage, and understanding had reached a new chapter, one that promised a future of cooperation, learning, and respect between species. The morning light filled the palace gardens with a soft golden glow. The cubs were already awake, stretching their limbs and chirping softly as they explored the familiar surroundings. Their glowing fur reflected the sunlight, and their playful energy filled the area. Mara watched them quietly, a smile on her face. She had learned their patterns and moods, and she knew how to guide them without frightening or controlling them. The emperor joined her in the garden, walking calmly among the cubs. He observed the interaction between Mara and his children closely. The cubs approached him with confidence, but they did not leave Mara's side. This balance of trust fascinated him. He had expected fear or hesitation from his children toward a human, yet here they were, playful and relaxed. "You have done more than protect them," the emperor said softly to Mara. "You have guided them, taught them patience, and gained their trust. That is no small achievement. Mara shook her head gently. I only wanted to keep them safe. They were young and vulnerable. I did what anyone would do. The Emperor's golden eyes reflected thought. Few would earn their trust so completely. Humans are often unpredictable, yet you have shown qualities that even my people struggle to master: empathy, patience, and courage. You have my respect. The cubs, sensing the calm approval of both Mara and the Emperor, chirped happily and explored the garden. One of them, a small silver-furred female, climbed onto Mara's shoulder, looking curiously at the Emperor. Mara laughed softly and stroked its fur. She realized that the cub's bond with her had strengthened their confidence and sense of safety. Tira, one of the Emperor's scouts, approached carefully. The cubs are calm and relaxed, she said. They follow her guidance willingly. This is remarkable. She has done what our training cannot always achieve. The Emperor nodded. Yes. Patience and understanding have guided them, not force. This is a lesson we must remember. Mara knelt down, encouraging the cubs to approach her. They responded immediately, nuzzling her hands and brushing against her legs. She spoke softly to them, explaining in her calm voice that they would remain safe and that she would help them return fully to their family. The cubs chirped and moved happily around her, showing that trust had been fully earned. The Emperor observed quietly. He realized that Mara's approach had done more than guide the cubs, it had shown his people a new way to interact with their young. Strength and discipline were important, but trust and empathy could achieve results that power alone could not. He felt a deep respect for Mara and curiosity about what else humans might contribute to understanding and cooperation. As the day progressed, Mara introduced the cubs to more of the palace gardens. She allowed them to climb, explore, and play, always keeping a calm presence nearby. The cubs responded to her guidance without fear, testing their limits safely and learning from her calm demeanor. The Emperor followed, observing the process closely. Each interaction demonstrated the importance of patience, understanding, and careful attention. The cubs' parents joined them later in the day. The cubs chirped and nuzzled their family, showing affection while also staying near Mara. The Emperor observed their interactions, noting how smoothly Mara's presence had guided their behavior. The cubs' trust extended not only to her but also influenced their family's perception of humans. It was a subtle yet powerful shift. The Emperor spoke softly to Mara. You have done more than return my cubs. You have taught them and reminded us all that trust and patience are valuable. This is a lesson we must carry forward. Mara smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment but remaining humble. I only did what felt right. The cubs trusted me, and I wanted to honor that trust. The cubs, sensing the calm and approval around them, chirped happily and played together in the garden. Mara encouraged their exploration, allowing them to test their strength and agility safely. Each playful leap and careful climb reinforced the trust they had in her guidance. Tira and the other scouts watched quietly. Her methods are unlike anything we have used, Tira whispered. The cubs respond willingly, without fear or hesitation. She has done something extraordinary. The Emperor nodded. Yes. Her presence has created balance and trust where none existed before. We must recognize and honor this contribution. By afternoon, the Emperor decided to formally introduce Mara to the palace council. He wanted to acknowledge her role and the lessons she had brought through her interactions with the cubs. The council members observed quietly as Mara explained her approach. She spoke about patience, understanding, and the importance of empathy in building trust. The council members listened carefully, impressed by the clarity and effectiveness of her methods. Even the Emperor's most disciplined advisors began to understand the value of guiding rather than controlling. Mara's words and actions demonstrated that cooperation and empathy could achieve results that discipline alone could not. As the sun began to set, the cubs curled up around Mara in a small garden clearing. They chirped softly, their glowing fur casting gentle light around them. Mara stroked their fur, speaking quietly to them. "You are safe now," she said. "You have your family and friends who will protect you." The emperor observed quietly, reflecting on the lessons of the past days. Mara had not only protected his children but had also shown him and his people a new perspective on trust, empathy, and cooperation. Her actions had strengthened the bond between human and alien, creating a foundation for understanding that could last for generations. He stepped forward and addressed Mara. "You have earned our trust and respect. Your courage, patience, and care have guided my children safely and taught us lessons that will shape our future interactions. For this, I thank you." Mara bowed humbly. "It was my honor to help. I am grateful for the trust the cubs and your family have shown me." The cubs chirped in agreement, nuzzling her hands and brushing against her legs. Their energy reflected happiness, safety, and trust. Mara felt warmth in her heart, knowing that her careful guidance had created a lasting bond between herself, the cubs, and the emperor's people. The emperor watched quietly as the cubs played and rested, understanding that trust, patience, and empathy were as powerful as any skill or technology. He realized that humans, though different from his people, could contribute greatly to cooperation and understanding. Mara's presence had shown this truth in the most tangible and heartwarming way. As night fell over the palace, the cubs slept peacefully beside Mara, and the emperor observed from a distance. The lessons of trust, courage, and empathy had been learned, and the bond between human and alien had grown stronger. Mara's actions had created a bridge of understanding, one that promised a future of respect, cooperation, and friendship between species. The first phase of the journey was complete. The cubs were safe, their family was reunited, and Mara had earned the respect and trust of the emperor and his people. The story of courage, patience, and trust had reached a new level, preparing all involved for the adventures and challenges yet to come. The palace of Zorith gleamed in the morning sunlight. Crystal towers reflected every hue of the sky, and the gardens shimmered with soft, colorful light. The cubs were awake early, chirping and stretching as they explored the familiar surroundings. Their glowing fur illuminated the walkways, casting gentle reflections on the crystal surfaces. Mara stood nearby, watching them carefully. She had grown accustomed to their energy and intelligence, learning their patterns and moods. The emperor joined her in the gardens, walking calmly among the cubs. He observed them with pride. They were playful and curious, yet their trust in Mara remained strong. This trust had not only kept them safe but had created a bond between human and alien that the emperor had never expected. "Your presence has done more than protect them," the emperor said softly to Mara. "You have guided them, taught them patience, and strengthened their confidence. That is a gift we will not forget." Mara smiled humbly. "I only wanted them to be safe. I am glad they have found their family again." The cubs chirped happily, running in small circles around Mara and the emperor. One climbed onto Mara's shoulder, looking curiously at the emperor. Mara laughed softly and stroked its fur. The cubs' trust was complete. They had accepted both their father and Mara as safe and guiding presences. The palace council had gathered to observe the reunion. The cubs played among their family while Mara remained calm and attentive. The council members whispered to each other, noting how smoothly the situation had been handled. The emperor's family recognized Mara's role and showed quiet gratitude. Even the elite scouts, who had guided the search, were amazed by the way the human had influenced the cubs' behavior without force or command. Tira, one of the scouts, approached Mara and whispered, "You have achieved what few of us could. The cubs trust you completely. This is extraordinary." Mara shook her head gently. "I only acted with care and patience. They responded to trust, not fear." The emperor nodded. "And that is the lesson we must carry forward. Strength and discipline are valuable, but patience and empathy can achieve results that force cannot. You have shown us this truth." As the day progressed, Mara guided the cubs through the palace gardens. They explored small streams, climbed low crystal walls, and investigated the soft glowing plants. Each playful movement was careful yet confident. Mara allowed them to act naturally, only intervening when necessary to ensure safety. The cubs chirped happily, and their fur glowed brighter in response to her calm guidance. The emperor observed quietly. He realized that Mara's influence had not only protected his children but had also taught them a lesson in patience, trust, and cooperation. They had learned that guidance could be gentle yet firm, and that safety and understanding could come from unexpected sources. By midday, the emperor called for a meeting with the council and Mara. "Today, we celebrate not only the return of my children but also the lesson they and we have learned," he said. "Trust, courage, and empathy are strengths that should guide our actions. This human has shown us these qualities. We honor her contribution and recognize the alliance she has created between species." Mara bowed humbly. "I am honored. My goal was only to protect the cubs and ensure their safety. I am grateful that my actions could help in this way." The cubs chirped softly, nuzzling her hands and brushing against her legs. They had grown attached to her, showing affection that reflected their intelligence and emotional depth. Mara laughed softly, feeling warmth and pride. The cubs' trust had grown into a bond that was strong, lasting, and meaningful. The emperor continued, addressing the council. "We have seen that trust can bridge gaps between species. Humans may differ from us in many ways, but their patience, courage, and empathy can be powerful allies. This day is proof of what cooperation can achieve." As the sun began to set, the cubs rested around Mara and their family. Their glowing fur created a soft, gentle light across the palace gardens. Mara sat quietly, observing their calm contentment. She realized that the cubs' journey had taught her as much as it had taught them. Patience, understanding, and trust could create bonds stronger than any technology or weapon. The emperor joined her, watching the cubs play. "You have changed the way I see humans," he said. "Your actions show that courage and wisdom can take many forms. Trust, patience, and empathy are as powerful as strength and skill. You have earned our respect." Mara nodded humbly. "I only did what I felt was right. The cubs trusted me, and I wanted to honor that trust." The cubs chirped in agreement, jumping playfully and running among the gardens. They were confident, happy, and secure. Their trust in Mara and their family was evident, and the emperor could see that their journey had strengthened them in ways that no training or discipline could have achieved alone. Tira and the other scouts observed quietly. "This human has shown qualities we rarely see," Tira whispered. "She has earned the cubs' trust completely and created harmony where none existed before." The emperor nodded. "Yes. Her guidance has been invaluable. She has taught us lessons that will shape our future, not only in caring for our young but also in building alliances with other species. Patience, courage, and empathy are forces to be respected and valued." Night fell over the palace, and the cubs settled down, curling around Mara and their family. The soft glow of their fur illuminated the gardens, creating a peaceful, serene scene. Mara stroked their heads gently, speaking softly. "You are safe now. Your family is here, and you are loved." The emperor watched quietly from nearby. The cubs' journey had ended safely, and the bonds of trust had been strengthened. Mara had not only protected them but had also taught lessons of patience, courage, and understanding. He realized that the trust between species could be a powerful force for the future. As the stars began to shine in the sky above Zoroth, Mara looked at the cubs and their family. She felt a sense of fulfillment and peace. Their journey had been challenging, but it had also created understanding, trust, and harmony. The cubs were safe, happy, and confident, and the bonds between humans and aliens had grown stronger than anyone had expected. The emperor approached Mara one final time. "You have earned our trust and respect. Your courage, patience, and care have protected my children and shown us the strength of empathy. This day marks the beginning of a new understanding between our species." Mara smiled humbly. "I am grateful. I only wished to help. I am happy the cubs are safe and loved." The cubs chirped happily, nuzzling Mara's hands and brushing against her legs. Their trust and affection reflected the bonds formed during their journey. Mara realized that trust and patience could create connections stronger than fear, power, or technology. The Emperor watched as the human and his cubs shared laughter, play, and gentle care. He knew that this day had changed everything. The bonds formed here would shape the future, creating a foundation of respect, cooperation, and understanding between species. The palace of Zorith was calm and peaceful that night. The cubs slept safely with their family and Mara nearby. Trust had been earned, courage had been recognized, and harmony had been restored. The story of bravery, patience, and empathy had reached its conclusion, leaving a lasting legacy for humans and aliens alike.